Hello and welcome to this episode of Authentic Achievements, where I'm delighted to be joined by the fabulous Elizabeth Henson. Elizabeth is a podcaster, photographer, and a passionate coach and consultant for online business owners. Elizabeth helps business owners step into leadership and build communities. She specialises in helping 6- and 7-figure CEOs get control of their needy audiences. Elizabeth believes in the power of relationships and finding our own version of success. Her community management agency and online course are built around a unique 5-step framework that masters community and a lead generation strategy. And I love that because community is so important, isn't it? We want to be, as human beings, we're social animals, want to be connected, don't we? So thank you, Elizabeth, so much for joining us.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Kim. Thanks for having me.
It's a delight. I can't wait to learn more because this is one of the things that I think really challenges us, doesn't it? As we go into building our businesses and all of a sudden we've now got to create that community around us, particularly since we moved through the pandemic, when I think it became even more important, didn't it, to get that connectivity going, to feel like we belonged. So could you start by sharing a little bit of your story with us, please?
Yeah. So, community marketing is community. And it's funny because, when I was trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, I still kind of am, right? And you go around and you ask everybody, like, what am I good at? Like, when you think of Elizabeth Henson, what do you think of? And everybody would say community, bringing people together, networking, leadership. And I'm like, how do you monetize that? Like, I love that you guys know me for these things, but how do I turn that into a job? Right. And, I don't really consider myself to be amazing at marketing. I always am like, I do community-based marketing, but I've been reading a lot lately about everything marketing is essentially community. I mean, if you think of Nike, if you think of Apple, if you think of these big companies, they are successful in their marketing because they're reaching this audience that feels, like they're seen and heard and, valid when they are in the presence of this brand. So, I just wanted to kick off with that little golden nugget. But as far as my journey, I'm still on it. It's very twisty. It's very turny. I went from graphic design to teaching art to wedding photography. And that's when I really got my taste of being an entrepreneur and being my own boss. And then quickly decided that I loved teaching other, not only photographers, but other business owners, what's possible and how to start their own businesses. And I've been slowly pivoting out of photography and into this more community-based marketing and consulting space. So yeah, it's a very messy journey, like most entrepreneurs.
I think it's so true, isn't it? And I don't think we ever have a smooth journey because as entrepreneurs, we have to take risks. We have to go and try the unknown, don't we? And therefore, sometimes you kind of look at your journey moving forward and go, okay, that just looks crazy. But when you look at it going backwards, you can see how each one of those steps brought you a different skill, enabled you to learn something else that got you ready for the journey you're on. I often say that life only makes sense in the rearview mirror, because when you're in it, it's just a little bit too messy, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's such a great point, because once you master that concept and that mindset of taking each thing as a lesson and not a failure and not a mistake, in my business, we don't even use terms like right, wrong, good, bad, because it's all just learning opportunities. And once your brain really learns how to process through each learning opportunity, you start to see success and progress in a different way.
I love that. That's so true. I mean, they say, don't they, that success is always one step after failure, because actually we're never really failing. We're just iterating. We're just learning and looking at it and saying, okay, what bits of that didn't work and what bits of it did work? It's never completely wrong. There's always parts where you can go, okay, well, let me take the bit that worked and let me try something different on the bit that didn't work. So I love that that's the ethos that you've got for your organization and for your communities, because I think, when we can change that mindset, everything else becomes so much easier. So what would you say has been your proudest achievement so far?
Well, the easy answer to that, of course, is like, I have 3 amazing, tiny humans. And of course, I want them to be my legacy in a way. But I really like to separate motherhood and business, but I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job as a mom justice if I didn't say that. But as far as business goes, I really truly think my biggest achievement is just to continue to explore and to be the scientist of this experiment. And I've been really leaning into growing a team. We have about 6 now, and I love that part of being a business owner. And it's really pushing me and challenging me to be the best, leader that I can be. But, I want my business to be something that can run without my energy. And, we're not there yet, but I know that is the biggest achievement that I have, but that I'm also working towards, so that I have something that I can sell or pass down to my kids one day. Our business is worth nothing if we're a solopreneur and we're the only ones that can run it.
Oh, that is so true. It's one of the questions that I ask clients that I'm working with, what's your exit plan? And very often they'll sit there and go, I haven't got an exit plan yet. It's like, well, you're not immortal, so you do need one, because if your business only works with you in it, then it doesn't survive you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to pass it on to your children, or you don't get to sell it to somebody because it doesn't. So I think the fact that you know that, and you're already thinking about how do I make sure that the business doesn't just survive but thrive without me in it, then that's it's a great way of creating that legacy, isn't it? Making sure that it survives you in the way that you want it to survive you.
Yeah, it's an interesting pivot because, as a photographer and then a solopreneur, it's like, oh, my business can't be successful without me, like I'm what makes my business successful. And there's kind of an ego shift that happens when you really start leaning into team building, and like, gosh, my business is so much more successful when I surround myself with amazing people. And I think about these little nuances with my client where I'm rushing through a task, right? Doing a community management task, and I'm spending about 15 minutes on it. And I'm like, if I have my assistant do that, but she spends 30 minutes on it because that's her responsibility, and she's not rushing because she has to be, on an interview or doing all these things that I have to do as the CEO, the client's actually getting better service. They're getting better service because they're getting more time and attention and care with someone that's going through that process. And that was all just really eye-opening for me, that it isn't about I have to be the best and I have to do everything, but I can provide a better service when I have other people, around me.
I love that. It really is about helping people to play to their strengths as well, isn't it? Because, what really should be about the output, what the client's getting, the service that they're providing. And, it takes a shift though, doesn't it, to move from that being in control of everything and going, I'll do it all, to trusting that actually somebody else can do it just as well as you, if not better, even if it takes them slightly longer. But it's because, so eloquently put, it is their responsibility. So they're not having to wear 50 other hats. And that makes it so much easier, doesn't it? So that's, what would you say has been your biggest learning in kind of moving from that space of being a solopreneur into that, how you created that first team, and what were some of the things that you wish you'd known earlier to make that transition smoother?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things I learned was probably right before I really started building a team. And this is going to sound kind of like woo-woo, but just that I have everything I need. I made a really big business investment, and I was having a meltdown about, finances and money, like we all do. And I was working with my coach at the time, and I was like, I just need more money. Like, I'm about to go on maternity leave. I don't have maternity leave saved up. And I just was like, I need. And she had to really help me work through, like, I don't actually need anything. Like, our business is about service, and you can take my house, you can take everything from me, but I can go out in the street and help people, right? Like, that's what it's really about. And that can't be taken away. And once you really realize, that we have everything we need, and we stop chasing and we really get in the present, like, everything kind of changed, my whole like mindset and my ability to show up for my business when things are hard or scary, just reminding myself that I have everything that I need. And then as I started leaning into the team building, I would say one of my biggest lessons has just been really learning how to systematize and figure out what is repeatable and how can I take, what's in my brain and turn it into some kind of process or methodology. Like you mentioned in the intro, my 5-step methodology to community building. Like a year ago, I would have said, I don't know why I'm so good at community building. I'm just intuitive, right? Like I just know what to do. But building out that 5-step process was me saying, okay, what is intuitive? What makes this my superpower? And how can I get that out of my head and onto paper? And really learning how to systematize everything so that somebody else in my business can do it.
That's such a great lesson. And it's true, isn't it? We're all born with a natural talent. And that feels very egotistical to admit that we've got a natural talent. But it's just something that comes natural to us. It might not be, I realized many years ago, my natural talent is I can talk to anybody. I thought that's really very talented, anybody can talk to anybody, until you see the people that can't, until you see the people that really struggle with it. And I think, the fact that you've dug into yours and gone, okay, it's not just that I'm intuitive. I know how to do certain things in a certain way. And that's teachable. That's passable knowledge that you can share with others. And to your point, you can serve. It's got to be such a great gift. And I think the lesson that you had around, we have got what we need. And even if everything else, material were taken away from us, we'll survive. We've still got those parts. But I think there's a moment, isn't there, almost in all of our journeys where we have to come to that crossroads. We have to go, okay, actually, I would still be able to go out and help. I'd still be able to bring up my amazing little humans, and I'd still be able to create that legacy. It suddenly becomes so much more freeing, doesn't it?
Yeah. When we're not so attached to the outcome or, making money or accolades, equal our success. It's like, no, we get to create our own version of success. And, it's just when you're chasing something, you can't really get there, right? Like goals are important and we want goals to be, specific and measurable and all those things, but it's a different feeling. Our thoughts drive our reality. And if we're constantly thinking, I need more, then you'll never really have enough. It's like, if I can have enough right now, even if it's with nothing, then I'll still have enough no matter what my situation is, right? It's learning how to say, I have enough. I don't need XY amount of dollars to achieve something. I have what I need right now.
I love that. It's so true, isn't it? When we get really present to the present and realize that's actually all we've got, because the past no longer needs us and the future isn't promised. So we may as well just be in the moment.
Yeah. And, it's funny how everything in our life mirrors. So I kind of had this like rock bottom meltdown, but then a year later, I was actually talking with my therapist and, I was like, I just feel like there's something missing in like my marriage and my relationship. And I just feel like there's a void, right? And she said, the only reason you feel a void is because you're desiring something that you don't have. And it was like that exact same thing that I went through in my business. Like the only reason I felt like something was missing was because I was desiring something that I didn't have. And it was almost like that same realization of like being present, like knowing that what you have is all you need, So I think sometimes that's just all this proof that our thoughts kind of dictate our reality. And if we can curb our thoughts into thoughts that serve us, then our reality starts to change.
I love that. I was saying something the other day, our thoughts are just like our actions. Einstein said this theory of relativity: for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And the same is true of our thoughts. Everything we believe to be true, the exact opposite could also be true. It's about how we view it, isn't it? Yeah. And once we learn to view it from what we want, from the positive view, then funnily enough, the world seems to be a much better place. We feel much happier and much safer in our skin. So what would you say has been your greatest lesson so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think really just that, learning that, I have everything I need and, really learning how to control my thoughts. And, you know, you start to, and I've had a lot of training around this. Like I didn't just wake up one morning and like learn how to, you know, create my thoughts. I trained under James Wedmore. I don't know if anybody listening is familiar with him. He's like amazing at mindset. And it's a slow thing. It doesn't just change overnight, but you start to really recognize it in so many other areas of your life. Like, you know, when you have a friend that is like struggling with something, you're like, oh man, like, you know, if you just chose some different thoughts. And that's like, it's really hard to tell somebody, but like from the outside looking in, like, gosh, you really free yourself of so many constraints and so many limitations when, you know, you allow the negative thoughts or the thoughts that don't serve you, you know, to really create that reality. So, I mean, I think overarching, like that's just been my biggest lesson, is just learning how to operate from, you know, who I want to become and that best version of myself. And when I'm not, and when we have bad days, because we all do, just understanding that, you know, it's something that I'm in control of and that I can change and make better. But there's business lessons like, you know, every single day. I've learned how to, you know, master my schedule better and budget my time better. I used to be so time poor. Like, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. And now I feel like I have an abundance of time and I have the exact same amount of hours in a day, you know?
That's amazing. It's true, isn't it? When we change it, I had somebody say to me the other day, do you just have more hours in your day than anybody else? And I was like, no, but I start my day with, I've got everything I need. I've got all the time that I need to get these things done. And when I think of it like that, then I end up getting it done. I don't know if I just convince myself and therefore, you know, make it happen. But you kind of look at it and go, well, if I start from a position of I don't have enough time, I won't have enough time, because I'll waste hours of thinking time worrying that I don't have the time.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like that word overwhelm, right? Like, oh my God, I used to be the queen of like, I'm overwhelmed. And then I learned like overwhelm isn't really real. Like you can't take overwhelm and, you know, put it in a jar. So where does it come from? Like it just comes from our thoughts, and we're wasting so much time just saying I'm overwhelmed. Whereas if we just say like, what's my next action step? Like, you know, it changes productivity like across the board. Now, if I could figure out how to go to yoga 5 days a week now, then we'd really be there, right? Like I haven't made it. I'm not perfect. I'm still like, man, like there's this one thing that I really want to fit into my life. And it's always like this little puzzle piece where I'm trying different ways to fit it into my schedule, but it'll never be perfect. But just knowing that it's a work in progress, and you know, that I'm not a victim of not having enough time. I need to figure out how to put this puzzle together.
I love that. It's just changing that way of thinking, isn't it? My nan used to say, you know, every day is a school day. And I think it is every day, you know, we have to learn. And I think it's finding that self-compassion as well, isn't it? When you didn't find a way to make the puzzle work today, it doesn't mean to say you won't find a way to make it work tomorrow. And celebrating those small wins when you make it to yoga, yay, I got there. And if I can do it once, I can do it again, because all of that helps us, doesn't it, to kind of keep progressing, keep moving forward.
Yep, absolutely. I love it. I just, like you said in the beginning, like knowing that everything is a lesson, I think is truly like one of the most important things, that every time something feels hard or difficult or heavy, like what's the lesson here? What can I gain from this experience?
I love that, because then you're looking for being able to take something away from it that you want to take away from it, instead of just being left with the pain. Because I think often, you know, we don't talk about what's happening. We talk about what we've made it mean, and we've turned it into a something. But actually, this happened. We've made it mean we're not good enough. We're never going to be successful. We get these massive like emotional labels, don't we? And you're like, but that isn't what happened.
Yes.
This happened, and we've gone over here. We've created some story.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I mean, we put meanings on everything. I love that, and I always forget that piece, right? We make like, oh, my business, like I didn't make enough money, so I'm failing. Like, no, you can put a different meaning on that. Oh, I didn't make XYZ amount of money, so the lesson I learned is, like, we get to choose which thought process we have, which meaning we attach. So why not choose something that serves us, right? Like, You're not losing anything by just trying a different meaning.
That's such a great point, because, if we think about it, the only thing greater than fear is hope, and yet both of them are imagined by the same brain. So we have to imagine what we're fearful of because it hasn't happened, and we have to imagine what we're hopeful for. So neither one is more likely than the other because we imagined both of them. So you can't trust one source and not the other. It's the same source, but we don't think of it like that, do we? So we're like, so we seem naturally drawn to our fear, to the fear that we're not going to get there, that it's not going to be enough. And I know that that's obviously our brains were designed to go to fear first because people, that things were out to eat us, but we're not there anymore, are we? We're not prehistoric, and therefore we get a chance to change that thinking.
Yeah, I read something really interesting recently too about like that feeling of anxiety or anxiousness. And there's two things that I think are super interesting because I'm not like diagnosed with anxiety or anything, but I have thoughts of like, I feel anxious right now, right? Like, what is that feeling? And I read once that when you feel anxious, it's because you're not truly in your highest good or like doing your gifts. And this is why a lot of people that, are in jobs that they don't like are anxious or unhappy or depressed because they're not really using that superpower that we talked about a few minutes ago. And if you think about every time you're in that superpower, that gift that you have, that happy place, that passion, whatever you want to call it, like there's no anxiety. Like if you're on stage, there might be like a nervousness energy, right? But like there's none of that like negative feeling. It's all euphoric. It's all good because you're kind of doing the thing that you love. And I just thought that was so interesting. Like when you see anxious people, that they're not using their gifts. And then I also read that, anxiety is people that live in the future. So they're fearing that something may happen. So they're focused on the future. And then depression, you're focused on the past. So again, we kind of have this recurring theme totally by accident on this episode of like being in that present can help with some of those feelings.
That's amazing. I'd heard that about anxiety. I hadn't heard that about depression, but it makes such sense, doesn't it? And I guess poor souls that are feeling both, they're kind of missing out the present, aren't they? They're remembering the past and projecting it into their future. And that's got to be such a hard place. I've had those times where you feel a bit anxious, and you're right, it's always been when I've been misaligned to the things that bring me joy, the things that, and it feels awful, doesn't it, to go actively to seek things that bring us joy. Because we're supposed to work hard and we're supposed to do all of these bits. And when you're doing something that brings you joy, even if it is working, it doesn't feel like it, does it? It doesn't feel like this is effort or work. So I think there's a mindset shift as well to get yourself into the place that's going, you can enjoy it. And that's okay. It's okay to be happy in what you do. It's okay for it to be fun. Amazing. So if you could go back and tell your younger self some advice, what would it be?
I think there's so many, but really just to continue, to pursue. I don't know that I would do anything differently. But I think just to slow down and to continue to pursue the journey. I will say I'm like the queen of like conquering something and moving on. And I have a lot of thoughts of like, if I would have just stuck with that one thing. I did this mastermind like 4 years ago that was super successful. But then like once it got hard to sell it, like I gave up, right? I was like, on to the next thing. I'm going to sell my same audience whatever they want. And I'm just like, I'm a manifesting generator. So I'm like, here's the new offer. Here's the new offer. And I'm always like, man, if I would have just figured out how to systematize, I know then what I know now and how to create one offer that's really good and then power through that difficult stage of like building the machine to sell it. I feel like I could have a lot of different outcomes. Right? Because to me, that was easy. Like these people will buy anything. So I'm just going to continue to make new stuff. But you kind of exhaust yourself when you could build out a revenue stream that's more, sustainable. So I would probably say that's the one I would, if I could go back as my younger self, I would say like really like power through those those hard moments, because that's when you learn. And, you know, while it's fun to create new offers, I wasn't learning the same lessons that I could have learned.
That's such a great lesson, because we see that so often. I remember working for big organizations that did the same thing. Like, we've got this base that we can sell anything to, we'll just create something new for them. It's like, but you're not bringing in any new customers.
Right.
At some point, if you don't bring in new customers, your business is going to come to a natural end, because unfortunately all of us come to a natural end. So those customers, you know, will eventually, you know, not be in business themselves, will not need what it is that you're doing. But I see so many organizations that get themselves stuck in that space of going, because you're right, it gets to a point, doesn't it, that tipping point where you need a system, you need it to be repeatable, and not just repeatable by you, which you've so eloquently shared with us today in moving to that building a team, those bits of saying, actually, how do I get what I do out of my head and be able to give it to the team, so that the team can then make it their own, bring their own unique talent to it, but at least it will be an iteration, it will be the next version of kind of what we've already proven works.
Yeah, exactly. And just, yeah, like conquering the cold traffic and finding new customers is exactly it. Like that felt really hard for me. So I would just say, okay, cool. Well, I know they'll buy this thing. They'll buy this thing, because they just already knew, like, and trust me. But I really had trouble pushing through that barrier of, how do I stick with one thing?
Yeah. But that's such a great lesson, and a huge growth opportunity, because that in itself is scary, isn't it? You know, taking the choice and saying, I'm going to stick with this, even if it's tough, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it feels like I just want to go over here and recreate because I like it over there. It's like, I've got to be able to do both.
Yeah. And you can, you know, I totally am an advocate for being multi-passionate, right? Like, I think we should all diversify our revenue streams, but that's not really what I mean, right? Like, I mean, like, oh, like, I just gave up because it was hard, right? And having a team allows me to still be creative, to come up with new offers, to have different ideas, but they're going to help me maintain the selling machine of this other thing, right? Like, we all like to make a course and then it's hard to sell the course. But since I have a team, they're like keeping me on track of, like, no, we have to focus on getting, you know, course sales every month, or we have to focus on getting leads for the agency every month. And it's really the accountability. And, you know, going back to lessons learned, one of my first, like, aha moments of having a team was like, man, I'm being more efficient because this person's waiting on my deliverable. And I noticed that I was getting more done because somebody needed that from me. So I was like, not only am I investing in the time and work that they're putting in, but I felt like I was investing in myself, because that accountability piece was like changing the game. And that was the point where I never looked back, because I did have a couple, like, trying to hire people and it didn't really work. And that was all me, not them. Right. But then once I was like, man, like, this is a great investment. Even if they give me no output, they're keeping me on the ball, because I will do anything for somebody else. It's when it's me by myself alone that I'm like, I don't need to do that today.
I love that. It's so true, that we can passionately procrastinate and go, if it's just for me, like, well, if I don't get it done today, it's fine. Whereas if it's for somebody else, we find the space, we find the time, don't we? We go, yeah, no, I'll do it. Even if I'm gonna vastly, like, eat into the time that I was going to spend doing something that was just for me. I think that accountability, that drive to help people, to, you know, to make sure that you're not holding them back. And when you've got a team, you can be the one holding them back, can't you? If they're sat waiting for you.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I refuse. I will not be the bottleneck in my business. I will not. Like, I'm like, y'all have to tell me if you're ever waiting on something from me.
I love it. That's amazing. I could chat to you all day, but I'm very conscious that we are running out of time. So could you tell us how people can get in touch with you and who you help? Yeah.
So I'm on Instagram at Elizabeth.Henson. I don't know what platforms you guys love. I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram. I have a Facebook community. So if you're interested in Facebook groups or community building, it's called the Community Builder. You can just search Facebook groups, the Community Builder. You can join us. It's totally free. And I share all kinds of tips and tricks on how to double your engagement in your Facebook groups. Which is essentially how I help people. I help people build communities. That lands me most of the time focused on Facebook groups, but I really help people tackle the skills that they need and who they need to become to build the community that will essentially be their community-based marketing, because it's all about our way of being. Our way of being is going to attract that community to us. And of course, there are actual systems and steps and methodologies and processes, but at the end of the day, that way of being is the most important piece.
Amazing. Elizabeth, thank you so much. I will make sure that all of that information is in the notes below. And thank you for coming on and sharing all your insights with us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, this was awesome, Kim. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. And thanks everybody for watching and listening. Until next time, take care.